Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Chamber Chat. Today,
Thank you. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. We're going to give the public what they need, some good information.
Nice.
I'd like
Looking forward to it.
and introduce everyone to Arquella Hargrove. She is an HR specialist among many, many other things. And so we're going to be talking about HR issues today and how they affect your business during this COVID-19 pandemic. So let me start by telling you a little bit about Arquella. Arquella brings a successful 25 plus years human resources track record to everything that she does. She's about implementing productivity for businesses. She helps organizations and business leaders build stronger, more effective teams and companies. She is valued for providing her clients with a set of principles on workforce development, diversity, and inclusion strategies, as well as EEO and company-wide codes of ethics and policies for their executives and employees to adhere to. She has several certifications in behavioral assessments such as Berkman and DISC, and she is also a certified mediator, certified trainer, and has human resources certifications in PHR and SHRM CP. So I could go on and on about Arquella. She's been a good friend of the chamber for a while, but just wanted to let you know that we have a heavy hitter today that's going to answer some of the questions that some of our members have been posing to us. So let's jump right into it, Arquella. Okay, so the first question that is being posed is, how do companies manage their employees remotely while staying at home and staying safe?
Great. Thank you. Thank you again, Carol. I'm excited to be here. And I know these are challenging times and kind of abnormal, right, for a lot of us to be going through this pandemic. And a lot of organizations are having to manage their staff remotely. And so a couple of things to think about when we're managing our staffs remotely is, I cannot stress it enough, is communication, right? So it's, before we go out on working remotely, it's communicating what's happening, it's communicating expectations, as well as what the company is going to continue to be responsible to do and what the employee is responsible to do as well. And then while we are working remotely, it's communicating online. I have a client that they send out every day, today it was Tuesday updates, right? What's happening, what to expect, what's coming down the line. And so it's that communication is going to be key. Also, it's taking a look at your current telecommuting or teleworking policies, if you have one in place. And so it really should cover things like equipment, right? If we're going to give our remote employees equipment or laptops, what does that process look like to check out? Or are they going to be able to VPN access from home? What does that look like? What's required? And then safety, right? While we're at home, making sure we're practicing safety, right? And so no one is harming themselves. A lot of things too we talk about when working to manage employees is, how much time are they going to be working? How are we going to check in with each other, right? And during these challenging times, we want to make sure that we are keeping a pulse on our employees, because that's when they need us the most. And then what they're going to be responsible for to keep the business going. And those are some of the expectations to discuss. And then how we're going to check in, often we're going to have meetings, right? And so those are things to really consider as we are shifting to managing more remote workforces.
Right. And I've heard some methods as far as checking in with employees where employers are requiring employees to sit in front of their computers for a certain amount of time, or having to log on to something at a certain period of time. Have you heard of those types of check-in mechanisms that employers are using?
Yeah. Typically with in traditional telecommuting and workforce, they would have some type of instant messaging system, which will show where people are online and they're working, or they may have folks to do Slack or some other tools that they will put into place to show that people are working, especially if you have non-exempt workers who are paid by the hour. And so that's a mechanism to show that they can check in, right? To show this is my check-in time, this is when I'm going to lunch. So those are normal practices just to ensure people are putting in 6, 8 hours, whatever it may be. And then 2, Zoom sessions, having meetings via Zoom, checking in at lunch via Zoom so you can see each other's faces and continue to have that connectivity. So those are not anything that's out of the ordinary. It's just a way just to track people's progress and making sure that the work is being done.
Mm-hmm. And you said something interesting with regard to the FaceTime. Mm-hmm. So how important do you think it is for employee morale for us to be able to see each other like you and I are able to see each other right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's very important, especially during these times when there's so much uncertainty and people are not sure what's going to happen, or how long we're going to continue to get paid, or if we're going to get paid, and what's happening with the company. And so when we have remote employees, we want to make sure that we are doing those checkpoints. And so whether it's a weekly check-in, here's what's going on, let's check in, let me hear from everyone, make sure everyone's doing good, because now people have to have kids at home that we're having homeschool, right? So there's a lot of dynamics going on.
To your regular job, now you have to be a teacher as well.
Exactly. And so this is really challenging. So it's really just taking that moment and just making sure that people are good. And even if you can see them, great, or just to hear their voice, it's good.
Okay, yeah. I would think so too, because even though we tend to be an independent republic of people in the United States, we still do like to get together and know that there's someone there.
Yes. We need that connection, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, it's key.
Mm-hmm. So how would you recommend that a work at home policy be implemented, a strategy or policy be implemented?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely recommend it because it helps to cover the employer as well as the employee. And so if the business has a policy, take a look at it, review it, revise it. If not, that we will possibly have a sample policy that business owners can download that we can offer after this call, but definitely want to take a look at it. And I mentioned some of this in the previous question, but it should cover access to equipment, right? If the business is going to provide equipment, or if the employee has to use their own equipment, that needs to be spelled out in that policy. How do we access files, confidential information? And then if they have access to that information and something happens, again, we want to make sure we have that covered in our policies and procedures. Should talk about time worked and our job duties. What are we responsible to do? Meetings, who's covered, who's going to be part of the telecommuting, essential personnel or not. And so those are things that really should be outlined in that policy, and have the employee sign off on the policy or an agreement.
I wanted to ask about that.
Yeah, so I have a policy, but then I also have a telecommuting agreement that kind of outlines the start time, the end time, as well as if we're given any equipment, any file access. All of that is outlined. They sign that agreement. And then of course it has disclaimers around if certain things happen, then this is what the consequences may be. So I highly recommend that there's a policy and as well as an agreement put into place.
Okay, so the policy and the agreement, those are two important pieces to make sure that your employees and you are accountable, so that the employees can also know what to expect under the telecommuting scenario.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. How have you seen non-exempt employees tracked? I know a long time ago we used to have the clock in clocks. Yes. I'm dating myself, but we had the cars where you punch in and punch out, and now there's online timers, all that sort of thing.
Right.
Do you see companies utilizing the electronic means as far as tracking hourly employees?
Yeah, absolutely. So if they have a current payroll system, a lot of times the payroll systems will have the time clock feature. And so they can log into their computer and enter the time that they start. They enter their time out for lunch, their time out for the day, and that helps on the tracking. Or sometimes they may have them to just track their time in a Excel spreadsheet. But typically we're finding where there's mostly done online to help with that. And so they can get paid because, again, they're paid based on the hours that they work. And so if they're not working hours, and unfortunately, they don't get paid for that.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, how would you advise our business owners and managers to address concerns around the unknown? You know, we
Mhm.
don't know when we're going to be out of state, home, stay safe. We
Right,
don't know if eventually the entire city will be locked down, the
right.
entire state. So how would you counsel executives and business owners to talk to their people about these things?
Yeah. First thing I like to say to leaders and business owners is first for them to breathe
Right.
and then allow their employees to breathe, right? And just know that this too will pass at some point. And then for them to be transparent and everyone watch the news, they know what's going on, but really just being transparent is, you know what, I'm in the same boat you are. I don't know what's happening at this point. Here's what I do know, right? We're going to continue to work for as long as we can, and we're going to do it remotely. And we're going to offer these benefits to you. We're going to allow you to take time off, or we're going to pay you, but setting the expectations to try to create that comfort for them, and then continuing to communicate on an ongoing basis. If it's daily, every other day, or weekly, as far as here's the updates I do know, right? And here's what we can expect. Like, for example, the Mayor Turner and the Harris County judge, they did a press conference this morning. So we're pretty much shelter in place until April 3rd, right? And so we know April 3rd. And so it's like, we know here's what's happening between now and April 3rd. However, we're not sure what's going to happen after that. We'll continue to communicate. Please make sure that I understand what your concerns are, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can. I think it's just really just being transparent and authentic during this time, and just making sure they're keeping the lines of communication open with their employees.
Yes. It seems like communication is the basis for all of this.
Mhm.
And I know a lot of times as business owners, we don't necessarily we think that if we display any signs of concern for ourselves,
Mhm.
that we're showing weakness and don't necessarily want our employees to see us in that state. But the fact of the matter is that every business, no matter how big or small,
Mhm.
is in the same position at this point in time. I took a call earlier today where the top businesses admitted that they were bleeding income, I'm bleeding money. And
Mhm.
so, if they're doing that, then the smaller businesses are as well. So there's really no shame in, stating that you don't necessarily know. You're going to keep a positive attitude, but you don't
Mhm.
necessarily know. And communicating that, I think, can put the employees as to ease as well.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And it helps to build trust with your employees, right? It's okay to show that you're vulnerable. It's okay to express that you're concerned, you're frustrated, you don't know what's going to happen, and that just helps to build that trust between that leader and that employee, right? And just to kind of again keep it open. And it's okay because we're all in that same state at this point, right? We all, look at the market and watching retirement accounts fluctuate, right? And that's making us nervous. And it's okay to say that openly and honestly with people, and
mhm,
get that better connection as we are open in that manner.
yes, it
Mhm.
it helps. It really helps just to be honest
Yeah,
about,
absolutely.
about what you're going through.
Hmm.
So, A question that some employees definitely have is, am I still going to get paid? Now that I'm working from home and we can't go into work, am I still going to get paid? So how do you suggest employers handle that question?
Yeah, definitely. As long as the employer has set up where their employees are going to be working remotely, they have continued work responsibilities to continue the normal business at hand, then yes, they should be receiving compensation. And so they just continue that process. If they need folks to take time off because they need to take a day or they have accrued time, then absolutely people still should be getting paid if they're working remotely. Now, if you have you have folks who are exempt level or what we say salaried, if they work anytime within that week, they're paid for the full week. And so you just may want to make sure that they're adhering to Fair Labor Standards Act. But as long as people are working, they should be receiving compensation.
So could you repeat that? You said if salaried employees work at any time during the week, they still get paid.
Yeah, if they perform any work in a week, then they receive their full compensation for that week.
Okay. So
As
there
salaried
cannot
or
be.
exempt level employees, yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we wouldn't want anyone to, in midstream, attempt to have say, well, you only worked a certain amount of hours. I think that's where some business planning may come into play, where you might need to assess who's essential and who's not, you know,
Exactly.
at this point in time. So do you advise business owners along those lines as well, Arquella?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it may be that they are not able to continue to pay at that level. And so they may have some folks where they need to take unpaid leave or they need to be on an unpaid furlough, which is a temporary um, removal from work with the understanding that they will have a job when they come back. So there's some different strategies that they can put into place based on their budgets and based on what they can pay and who they can pay, at this time. So yes, we just want to make sure that they are not violating any of those employment laws during this time. And so we definitely will take a look at their situation and advise accordingly.
Okay. Yeah, I know that is a concern for business owners, with little income coming in at this time, continuing to pay people who are valuable to the business. It's just a matter of whether or not you can afford to continue paying them. So being creative as far as how to pay your employees, but still be able to have them perform at doing the tasks that you need them to do seems like at this time needs to be employed, being creative.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then unfortunately, if we have to lay people off or, they can certainly go and apply for unemployment benefits. And even if their hours were reduced, they can definitely go and make an application for unemployment benefits during this time. So the Department of Labor, has put out a directive to states to kind of relax regulations during this time. So definitely that's an option for employees to consider unemployment benefits.
Okay, and speaking of the pandemic and what's happening now, I know that there are several regulations, um, no matter what the industry is,
Mhm.
that are being laxed or maybe implemented at a later time. What have you seen has changed in the HR space with regard to regulations and employers?
Yeah, so definitely just around the making sure, again, folks can go and apply for unemployment benefits just based on being quarantined or based on reduction of hours, which has pretty much always been the case. But now, because folks are being quarantined and shelter in place, that may be that option as well as there is a new regulation that President Trump signed, and it's effective for April 2nd, and it is Families First Act. And so it really covers employers who have 500 or less employees to use emergency paid sick leave, as well as for family medical leave based on serious health conditions, and in case this is considered one of those. So definitely that's something that's coming out. And this is another resource I'll provide, a FAQ around the Families First Act, so people can understand what it is and if it impacts, if it's going to be applicable to their businesses or not. But it is for those who have 500 or less, or under 500 employees. And it's around that, again, emergency paid sick leave and family medical leave as it relates to this pandemic.
Well, I'm glad to hear that our government is being responsive. I mean, there are a lot of things going on Capitol Hill right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we hope that we can get as much help as we possibly can get right now.
Yeah,
I had an interesting question come in. An employee asked, if our business is non-essential and my employer makes me come to work still, can they fire me if I decide not to come?
so the first part of the question, Carol, was the business is essential or non-essential?
Non-essential. It's a
Okay.
non-essential business.
Okay.
And this person is concerned that their boss may still ask them to come into work.
So a couple of things here is that for when we have government mandate where non-essential business are to be closed, basically, and everyone is to be remote, that's an executive order, which again is more, the concern is the business owner being fined for being open, because if they're saying non-essential businesses are to be closed and everyone is to work remotely, then that's the business owner will have the issue of being fined. And if they're demanding employees to come in, then that's a concern because they shouldn't be open anyway. And so the employee may have a issue where it's a wrongful discharge, right? That they can go and have talk with someone on the legal side about that, if it gets to that point. Mm-hmm. But you have employees where your business is still essential and it's up and moving and up and running, and you have employees who refuse to come into work, then it's having a conversation with them as to why they don't want to come to work, and just try to work with them in those situations, because they may have children at home they need to be working with for school, or they may have an underlying health issue. So we just need to have a conversation with people and try to work with them during this time. But hopefully no one is demanding someone to come into work when we're under order to work from home and be more remote.
Right. Well, we hope so, but I know there are still some people that are just so used to working, they don't really know what else to do, and they think that if they continue to work, something good will happen.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that we just have to deal with the situation in a positive manner, and just abide by the law, because at the end of the day, it may be more trouble for us in the end rather than complying with the law as it stands. Mm-hmm. And so, Arquella, I appreciate your time. We're going to ask a couple more questions and then wrap up. If it gets to the point where a business owner sees that they're not really going to make it, how would you suggest that they speak to their employees about that?
So they're not going to be able to
continue operations,
right? It's just to it goes back to communication. It's just to let them know that at this point, we're not going to be able to continue with the business, just due to what's happening. And unfortunately, we're going to have to close our doors, and, and just be authentic around it. And, here's what we can offer you. If there's a package, or if there's pay that they can provide to the employee, because they are closing, that's great. If not, again, just to direct them to that they can apply for unemployment benefits as a result of the business being closed. But yeah, unfortunately, that may happen to some businesses, and they just need to really just share that information with their employees. Here's what's happening. We have to close. I'm happy to be a reference for you when we get back to normal, or the business may reopen when we get back to
Right.
normal, right? And if so, I'm gonna call you, right? So definitely to have those conversations with people. And I think people will understand that, because it's just impacting in many ways. And there are companies that will be impacted in a negative manner.
Unfortunately, there
Mhm.
there will be. I'm glad that there are some resources available from the SBA, from the fund, from some other organizations that can help during this time as well. And
Yes.
so, as we close out, do you have any closing thoughts for our business owners?
Yeah, and if I can just go back to the last question,
Sure.
Carol, so if they're having that conversation, just making sure that if they can do it face to face, or in a Zoom session where they can see the person, or have it on via phone, but definitely making it personal, keeping it simple, getting right to the point, and also just documenting the reason
Documentation.
why they're terminating. Again, I'm all documentation is king, and I know this is what's happening, but we still want to document why this happened, in case someone comes back and may have a question around it. So just to make sure we're treating people with dignity and respect.
Absolutely, especially during this time because it's so stressful,
Yes, yes,
such a stressful time.
yes.
Okay. So thank you for those thoughts, Arquella. If you have anything else you'd like to say before we close our session.
No, this has been great. Thank you again, Carol. I appreciate the invitation to come on and share some tips, and just wishing everyone the best. And as I said, this will pass. We don't know when, but it's definitely just to be vigilant during this time, and being safe and being well, and making sure that we're staying connected. We need each other during this time. So staying connected, and to breathe, and to allow your people to breathe, and making sure we're checking in on people.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
Mhm.
Arquella, how can a business owner get in touch with you?
Great, thank you. So the business is Epic Collaborative Advisors, and you can go to the website, epiccollaborativeadvisors.com. My number, 281-755-2100. Or the email is Arquella, ARQUELLA, at epiccollaborativeadvisors.com. So if I can be of assistance to anyone, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yes, please do not hesitate to reach out to Arquella if you have any questions or concerns. And I'd like to encourage everyone to join the chamber. I know we have difficult times right now, but please put it on your mind to consider going forward. We also have updates on our social media platforms. You can search us at Greater Houston Black Chamber on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we welcome your comments to our chamber chats here, and welcome your questions. So thank you again for joining us today for Chamber Chat. Thank you, Arquella Hargrove, for your wise advice, and we will see everyone next time on Chamber Chat. Have a great
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Take care.
day. Take care.